This is where one of the marketing cookie cutter approaches come in. We've been taught wrong. We've been taught that the wider the fish net we cast, the more fish we'll catch. The opposite's true. The more narrow the net we cast. So for instance, let's say you happen to be a male and you primarily focus with women. Well, then the who should be, and if it's female executives or female CEOs, that should be the start, the who. Now, I've done this, by the way, over 1,000 times with companies and individuals. So I'll often get the question, yeah, but what about that guy? You know, there's one of my clients is a guy and I really liked working with him. I don't want to rule that out. What I often ask people to think about is, where does 80% of your revenue come from? If 80% of the revenue come from, in that particular case, female executives or female CEOs, then pick that. Because if a gentleman hears you share your CPOP or looks at your website and looks at your social media and sees who you are and relates to you, they're going to then ask the question, hey, I know you normally focus on this other audience. Would you focus on me? Could I be a client? Now you're in a much better position because you get to choose. Just because you say female CEOs doesn't mean that's all you serve, but now you get people coming to you and asking. In terms of the who and specifically on the what, now it depends on who your audience is. 80% of the time, the what is the pain point they're experiencing. That said, if your audience is CEOs who have a large ego, typically what happens is the what could be the pleasure point they receive.
Welcome to the Dov Baron Show. Come for the stories, stay for the learning. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I advise high-performing leaders, organizations on how to harness their emotional source code to transform their tribes purposefully. Are you mistaking your busyness for purpose? Could you distill your life's work and extract the essence of what the true purpose is with clarity in 10 words or less? Would you even dare to try? Well, today we sit down with global credibility expert Mitchell Levy. Mitchell has multiple TEDx's under his belt and over 60 books. He has mastered the craft of distilling profound insights into actionable clarity. In an era overflowing with information but starved for meaning, how does Mitchell guide leaders and organizations to cut through the chaos and pinpoint their true purpose with laser-like precision? What transformative powers does clarity unlock in our personal and professional lives? Well, you're about to find out. You're tuned into the Dov Baron Show. This isn't just another podcast. It's our exploration of the minds of those who shape the world. Every episode is a raw, unscripted collaboration between my guests and myself as we dive into the truths that few dare to ask. We find guests for you who are often unknown to the general public, but absolute titans in their field. The kind of people high-profile leaders turn to when they need an edge. If you're the kind of leader who craves depth over sound bites, hit that subscribe button right now, because this is where real thinkers come to sharpen their edge. For the next 2 episodes, we're joined by Mitchell Levy. Mitchell has transformed the trajectories of thousands of leaders and organizations by helping them to crystallize their purpose into powerful sound bite revelations. How can Mitchell's clarity revolutionize how you think about your success and purpose? Well, let's uncover that transformative potential of knowing not just what you do, but why you do it with pinpoint accuracy. Together, we're going to cut through the noise and focus on what truly matters, because this isn't just about finding your purpose. It's about defining it so you can clearly put it out there and not be ignored. Turn up the volume and help me to welcome multiple best-selling author and TEDxer, Mitchell Levy.
It is
Welcome,
an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Always a pleasure, mate. I look forward to our conversation. We had a few technical challenges getting there. Obviously, you won't know that as the listener, but it took a while. And we're going to get into technology and how that has impacted credibility in a bit. But before we do that, you've become sort of the go-to expert on credibility. What do you believe is the biggest misconception about credibility today?
The biggest issue with credibility is simply that it's not something people actually want. It's what they need. They don't want it because they think they already have it, or they don't think it's necessary.
I find it pretty interesting that you would even say that people don't think it's necessary. Why would somebody think it's not necessary? We're living in this social media. Everybody's about the likes. Everybody's got to be seen. Everybody's got to be famous. Isn't credibility screamingly important to everybody?
One would think so. I think so. But if you look at many of the influencers that are around in the world, they don't necessarily care about their credibility. They care about the influence. They care about the likes. They care about the views. And so sometimes they're not actually being themselves. They're not actually being credible. Probably the biggest misconception, if I'm going to add something else, there were 10 values of credibility, is when the integrity that somebody has, integrity, by the way, of the 10 values, the only value that appears twice is integrity. One is your external integrity. And that is when you're sharing who you are with the world, who you say you are. And then the second is your internal integrity. And that is who you really are. When there's a disconnect there, when there's incongruency there, that's when the hair on the back of your neck stands up. So how many times are you actually watching an influencer where the hair's standing on the back of the neck because you know they're saying stuff they don't believe in? That's when they don't have credibility, but they still have influence because there are a lot of people following them.
So that's the big distinction that I think is really important for people to get, is that, and we see this all the time in the social media world, where people have a lot of power and a lot of influence, but they have really very fragile credibility. Rather than saying they have none, they have fragile. It means that it doesn't take much to sort of take the pin and go pop, and the whole thing falls apart. And the problem with that often is that that person may have been really delivering some great value in what it was, but their credibility was so fragile. Is that a fair way of putting it?
That is very fair. Credibility is the quality which you're trusted, known, and liked.
Okay. So in your sort of journey from publishing to coaching to creating these clarity frameworks, what was the pivotal moment of failure or misunderstanding that ultimately led to your most significant breakthrough in understanding clarity and purpose?
It's always about what's the next pivot? Where do I want to spend time? Where do I actually want to add value? So in the old days, actually real old days, I was at Sun Microsystems and I was running the e-commerce components of Sun Supply Chain. And I said, hey, listen, I have to be a consultant. I have to go out there and do my own thing. And during the .com days, I was great. The pivot, which smacked me in the head, is when the .bomb happened. When I started book publishing, we published over 750 books. What ended up happening is COVID. Now, COVID was a really good slap on the head for many businesses, but my business went from a good six-figure business to zero almost overnight. So what happened during that time, I was interviewing 500 thought leaders on the concept of credibility. And for me, it was, I'm trying to think about that most pivotal point. Part of it was the learning. For me personally, prior to the interviews, I used to start a meeting whenever I got there. So to me, coming on time meant it was whenever Mitchell Levy showed up. What ended up happening in the first 10 interviews is we had a couple people come late. One person didn't show. And I started thinking to myself, well, I don't need to take this personally. I'm doing interviews. But what I do need to do is I need to be the leader that's leading that way themselves. So to me, when I talk about having know, like, and trust, part of being the trust, know, and like, part of being liked is that you're showing respect. And part of showing respect is coming early, coming prepared, coming with your heart. And so many people don't do that. But I realized that I'm always now going to be early. I'm always going to show respect. I'm always going to do work ahead of time before I meet with somebody, so I know who I'm meeting with on their grounds.
So I know that you're passionate about helping individuals articulate their purpose succinctly. I know in my work in helping people with purpose, most people actually don't really know their purpose. They've made something up. They've manufactured it. And it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just not their true purpose. So what I'd like to explore here with you is, first of all, how defining and aligning personal and organizational purpose can enhance sort of our leadership effectiveness so it inspires meaningful action. So I want to explore that first.
First, if you don't mind, I'm going to do a quick definitional thing so we're on the same bandwidth, same zone. When I work with people, I'm not helping them, quote unquote, define their purpose as is. Because I would say, based on the research, 90% of humans are born, live, and die without ever knowing their purpose. So that is that thing that we ultimately want to get to. What I can do is I can help people define where they are executing on their purpose today. And so now, if you're looking at that from a company perspective, and the company has clearly articulated in less than 10 words where they're executing on their purpose, now what happens is you have a playground, a clearly defined playground that the company plays in. It allows a significant transformation in the company and how the leaders lead. Because you now can take that playground and share it. It's going to change based on the division, based on the functions that people are doing. But you can now share it down in the organization, and you could allow the organization to be empowered because they know the playground they're playing in. That changes everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let's dig into that a little bit because, as I said, I think that most people don't know their purpose. And what they usually do is give some long, verbose answer to that question, or it's so short that it doesn't even mean anything either. So it's either very long, verbose, and doesn't mean anything, or it's very short and doesn't mean anything. How do you help them to define it and make it so distinct? Can we go through some real clarity, actionable steps here that an audience member can go, okay, I'm going to get out a pen. I'm going to work on this.
As a matter of fact, if you're okay with it, I will share the secret formula. Now, just to be clear, doing the interviews, I would send people a 16-minute video ahead of time saying, here's the secret formula. What I'm finding over time is that 98% of people can't apply it. So I would love it if you could come to the interview and be in the 2%. Even after sharing the video, that still happens. So I'm going to say, in order to make this happen, try to drop all the marketing cookie cutter stuff that you might be living with. Now, I'm going to say something that is going to be offensive to many.
Excellent.
What I've defined a term. It's called the CPOP, your customer point of possibilities. If you are a credible human, you are of service to others. If you have a credible company, you are of service to others. So the CPOP is two pieces. It is who you serve, if you're a credible company, credible human, and what is their pain point or pleasure point. Now, that comes before the why. That's the thing that's crazy. I would love to have conversations about why you're doing all this stuff. There are many reasons why, and I know you're a big why person, so we could talk about that. Why is important, but ultimately, if you're credible, what you want to be able to find is the who and the what. Right. So when you and I talked, by the way, when you finally said yes, that I should come on the air, what happened is we did your CPOP live. You and I just worked on it together. What I wrote down was the who and the what. So in your case, the who being elite individuals, the what being wanting what's missing. Let me share, and I'll remember what that means. Let me share with you what comes next. By the way, I'll share mine super quickly. Mine at this stage, actually, I have two that I'm doing, but the one that's very complementary to yours is Inc. 5,000 CEOs Leading the Future with Executive Abundance. Now, what's interesting about sharing a CPOP, by the way, 5 words, elite individuals wanting what's missing, very cool. What's cool about sharing a CPOP is the person who's listening can be one of 3 people. They can either be a referral partner, they could either be a prospect, or they could be somebody who doesn't care. Dov, it doesn't mean they don't care about you. It just don't care about the playground you play at. So if somebody says, if you're in front of a group or if you're on a call and somebody who is a really good prospect says, so Dov, what is it that you do again? Here's how you respond. There's a group of individuals, there's a set of companies that will really get a lot of benefit from what I do. Pause. Elite individuals wanting what's missing. Drop the mic, pause. What you should expect, if they're a referral partner or a prospect, they're going to say, tell me more. What do you mean? Tell me more. What comes next is, well, it's really interesting on these elite individuals. They have so much going for them. They have so much going on. They are so powerful. And what they have hidden is that thing. What's missing in their lives? What are they not doing? What are they not accomplishing? Are they hitting their legacy? Are they empowering and bringing people with them the best way possible? That's what I do. I sit down with these elite individuals, these organizations, and when we're done, they no longer ask that question. That would be, tell me more, just so I could give an example. So for me, what would happen, Mitchell, what do you do? Well, there's a group of CEOs that I really, really enjoy working with and get a lot of benefit from, Mitchell. That's, by the way, setting up the hook. Inc. 5,000 CEOs leading the future with executive abundance. By the way, the typical, what does executive abundance mean, is that next thing. Well, you know what? I'm getting a PhD. I'm doing a dissertation on executive abundance. So let me give you a quick thing, what that is. Most CEOs, and having sat on the board of a public company, most CEOs of fast-growing companies focus on one stakeholder group, investors or shareholders. And sometimes that means that they're ignoring four others: employees, customers, the community at large, and their family themselves. When I work with a CEO who's doing that, we focus on bringing abundance to all five stakeholder groups. The reason the who, what's important of is if it's a referral partner or a prospect, when they ask you to tell me more and you share the tell me more, in both cases, they were about 40, 50 seconds long. And the amount of credibility you have goes up so high because you're sharing things within a container. The container is so straightforward and so focused that when you start adding to it, that level of clarity that you have increases your credibility exponentially.
So that was really great. Thank you. And it certainly makes that clear. So now we've got, okay, who are you serving and what do they want?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So this is who I serve and what do they want? But oftentimes, and I think you probably deal with this much more than I do, people don't even know who they serve or what they really offer them. There's a laundry list. And the truth of the matter is, in fairness, you, as in dear listener, probably have a laundry list of things you can do. And I'm not saying that you should not do those things. And oftentimes that makes it very difficult for you to convey who or what you serve. So help us with that, because no doubt there's a listener going, listen, I'm not sure who I serve because I've got one client who's this, I've got another client who's that, another client who's the other thing, and I can do A, B, C, D, E.
So here's where I said the word marketing cookie cutter before. This is where one of the marketing cookie cutter approaches come in. We've been taught wrong. We've been taught that the wider the fish net we cast, the more fish we'll catch. The opposite's true. The more narrow the net we cast. So for instance, let's say you happen to be a male and you primarily focus with women. Well, then the who should be, and if it's female executives or female CEOs, that should be the start, the who. Now, I've done this, by the way, over 1,000 times with companies and individuals. So I'll often get the question, yeah, but what about that guy? You know, that there's one of my clients is a guy and I really liked working with him. I don't want to rule that out. What I often ask people to think about is, where does 80% of your revenue come from? If 80% of the revenue come from, in that particular case, female executives or female CEOs, then pick that. Because if a gentleman hears you share your CPOP or looks at your website and looks at your social media and sees who you are and relates to you, they're going to then ask the question, hey, I know you normally focus on this other audience. Would you focus on me? Could I be a client? Now you're in a much better position because you get to choose. Just because you say female CEOs doesn't mean that's all you serve, but now you get people coming to you and asking. In terms of the who and the specifically on the what, now it depends on who your audience is. 80% of the time, the what is the pain point they're experiencing. That said, if your audience is CEOs who have a large ego, typically what happens is the what could be the pleasure point they receive. So it really depends on the audience you're interacting.
Give us an example of that, if you would, please, so people can understand that it's the pleasure point rather than the pain point.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. So one of the second CPOPs that I have is dealing with those people who are using LinkedIn ineffectively. So the CPOP in that case is 6 words long. And what I ended up doing is creating a positive versus a negative, because everyone sells either pain or they sell too much. So in that particular one, I use business leaders pursuing abundance with LinkedIn. So that's a pleasure point that I consciously chose, because my first 5 or 6, as I was thinking about, were all the pain points, all the marketing cookie cutter stuff that people use that are really wrong. And ultimately, what I want people to ask me is, what do you mean pursuing abundance? And then I'll say, well, it actually looks at you. Who are you? Who do you want to serve? Who do you want to reach? Who do you want to talk to, and why? And let's figure out what is a good bespoke plan for you versus let me give you a marketing cookie cutter approach that has worked for somebody else and will also work for you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this sort of leads us into something that is very timely, which is the future of leadership credibility. You know, we live in this digital age, which of course is becoming increasingly dominated by AI. You and I might be on LinkedIn and we can see the amount of AI, what's now known as AI slop, which is people using AI to write articles in their area, and they think that it's good because it's saving them time, and I get that, but it's not really their voice. Therefore, one could imagine that leadership credibility is evolving. What are the essential traits or practices that leaders must cultivate to build trust and credibility in this AI age?
That's a great one. And by the way, just because many people can use AI to write their articles doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. What's bad is counting on it. So what happened in 2023 was amazing. AI has really come to the point where it's really powerful. What that means for anyone who's listening to this, thought leadership is now ubiquitous. So why would I listen to one podcast versus another? Well, Dov, because you're curating it. It's you. I'm going to listen to Dov Baron, and I want you to bring out the best of the people you're talking with. I care about you. If I have a one-on-one private conversation with you, I mean, you said no for me to join your podcast a couple of times because you didn't think I was ready, and you were right. You added value to me. You helped me really go high. This was, by the way, 5 years ago, but you helped me dive in, because 5 years ago I had just finished the credibility research, but I hadn't had enough practice using it yet. So credibility, if you think about, is the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked. Well, how can you be trusted? Well, you need to be authentic. You need to have external integrity. You need to be vulnerable in who you are and how you show up, and you need to be coachable. Those are 4 attributes associated with being trusted. And if you don't show those, so by the way, your AI, if it writes an article for you, is not going to show those things for you. So how do you show that? Well, you can have AI do the first pass, but then you update it. When you talk to somebody, you're not going to be that perfect be all end all that solves everyone's problem. You have to actually show up in such a way where you do demonstrate vulnerability, external integrity, authenticity, and of course, coachability, which is really what you were doing for me up front. Is, Mitchell, you weren't ready.
And it should be noted that you were willing to take that on the nose, go away, work on it, have another conversation, and still not be ready, and then come back again, having gone away, really integrated what I had guided you on, done the work, and come back and been very ready, and having served lots and lots of people. That's an important piece, because it's not just about people say, oh, I'm coachable, and then they get in a huff about the fact that you coached them, as opposed to, how can I serve in the greatest possible way? And what do I need to learn in order to do that? That part of your credibility isn't seen by your audience, but it has to be integrated by yourself. Would you agree with that?
By the way, just to be clear, I didn't like it the first time, but here's something that's really interesting. We talked about integrity. You were saying these things with your external integrity online, but as I was feeling your energy, as I was getting to know you and understand you more, you didn't mean anything negative. You were not trying to hold your head high and say, hey, I'm better and you need to do this. That consistency of how you showed up was so powerful. I'm like, yeah, Dov has something here. First time I didn't like it. Second time, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I did something marketing cookie cutter the second time. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? Okay, I'll get it. I'll come back. I didn't know it would take me 4 years to come back. It just happened that it worked out that 4 years later. But it was really, you were showing up being coachable, and you decided that I deserved having to spend a little time with me. I was honored, actually, that you spent time with me. I was more honored when you said yes, because you didn't change how you were reviewing me. You just saw a different Mitchell.
That's it. And this is a piece that I think that most people misunderstand about credibility. They think that credibility is already being there. And I think that credibility is the willingness to keep getting better and to show your vulnerability through that. This podcast is a very popular podcast. You just talked about it. It's ubiquitous, though, because when I started out podcasting 15 years ago, there was me and 3 other people. And now I'm really quite unknown in the world comparative to someone like, say, Joe Rogan, just using a name. The fact of the matter is, I've got to still keep upping my game. I've got to ask myself the same questions I asked you 5 years ago. Where am I just becoming sort of the wallpaper? I think that ego credibility is I'm already all that in a bag of chips. And real credibility is, yeah, I've got some stuff under my belt, but I want to learn, I want to grow. And that's what you're helping people to not only do, and this is really important, but to express. And I think that that's where we get stuck. So you can have the credibility and not know how to express it. You can have a way to express it, but not have the credibility. It's the two together. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Let me do an and to that. As a human, we vibrate at a frequency. The CPOP, the customer pointed possibilities that I'm creating, I'm actually listening to the human I'm interacting with. The CPOP represents in words, less than 10 words, the frequency you're vibrating at today. And when you're in alignment, when the words you say are in alignment with who you are in the actions and how you're a servant leader, how you have the intent and commitment to do the right thing, which is what you did for me, those that are interacting with you, they feel that much different about you. It really allows you to be a credible leader. It really encourages people to follow you because they believe that you really are doing the right thing and you're doing it for the right reasons.
Thank you. That's a really great way to put it. So, Mitch, we're almost at the end of part 1 of the show. We're going to come back for part 2 with Mitchell Levy. Before we go to that, I would like people to know how they can find out more about you and all your wonderful services. I know you've got a ton of books and TEDx, but let's just find out how people can get in touch with you and tap into those resources.
This is a good lesson for other people as well. I pick one. Go to mitchelllevy.com, mitchellllevy.com. You'll see the latest things that I'm working on. If you decide that LinkedIn's the vehicle for you, you can connect to me on LinkedIn through there. And if you want to book time on my calendar, that's also at mitchelllevy.com.
Fabulous. We'll make sure, of course, that is posted in the show notes. We'll also add all the social links for you in case you didn't catch it and in case there's a misspell or something. It'll all be right there for you. We're going to be back in just one click with part 2 of our delicious conversation with Mitchell Levy, discussing how you can really tap into your credibility and really be able to reveal it in a profound and succinct way, possibly in less than 10 words. We're going to be back very soon, so stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.